The flashing police lights cut through the darkness as officers stormed the stage during Tupac's most powerful verse. What happened next would become one of the most legendary acts of defiance in music history, and 35,000 fans would witness the moment when an artist chose to fight back against systematic oppression in real time. It was October 12, 1995. The Oakland arena was electric with 35,000 fans packed into every available seat, screaming along to every word as Tupac delivered one of the most intense performances of his career. He was in the middle of Me Against the World, pouring his heart into lyrics about fighting against a system designed to destroy him, when suddenly the arena's house lights came up and police sirens began wailing outside. At first, the audience thought it was part of the show. Tupac was known for dramatic performances, and the timing seemed too perfect to be real. But as the music continued and uniformed officers began appearing at the edges of the stage, it became clear that something very real and very dangerous was happening. Tupac noticed the commotion first. Even while singing, his eyes caught the movement of police officers coordinating around the venue's perimeter. His voice never wavered, but those who knew him well could see the tension building in his shoulders, the way his free hand clenched into a fist. The song reached its climax, just as a team of 6 officers, led by Detective Marcus Williams of the Oakland Police Department, walked directly onto the stage. The music stopped abruptly as the band members stepped back, uncertain of what was happening, but sensing the gravity of the situation. Detective Williams approached Tupac with an arrest warrant in his hand, speaking into a microphone that had been hastily connected to the arena's sound system. His words would echo through the venue and change everything that followed. But what Tupac did next would shock everyone who witnessed it. Instead of surrendering or trying to flee, Tupac walked directly toward the police officers. The crowd held its breath, 35,000 people watching in stunned silence as their hero faced down armed law enforcement on live stage. "Officers," Tupac said into his microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the arena, "I see you got some papers for me. But before you do whatever you came here to do, I want these 35,000 people to understand exactly what's happening here." Detective Williams tried to interrupt, but Tupac raised his hand. Nah. You came into my house, interrupted my show, in front of my people. The least you can do is let me explain to them why." The arena erupted in supportive cheers, but Tupac gestured for silence. When he spoke again, his voice was calm but filled with barely controlled fury. "Y'all see this?" he asked the crowd, gesturing toward the officers. "This is what they do. They wait until you're successful, until you're giving hope to people who look like you, until you're speaking truth that makes them uncomfortable. Then they come for you." Detective Williams stepped forward. "Mr. Shakur, you're under arrest for—" "Hold up," Tupac interrupted, his voice booming through the sound system. "These people paid good money to be here tonight. They deserve to know what you're arresting me for. What's the charge, officer?" Detective Williams hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with having this conversation in front of thousands of witnesses. "Assault and battery stemming from an incident last month." "Assault and battery," Tupac repeated, letting the words sink in. "And you couldn't wait until after the show. You had to come in here with all these guns in front of all these families to arrest me for something that allegedly happened weeks ago." The crowd was getting restless, sensing the injustice of the situation. Voices began calling out from the audience. "Let him finish the show. This is wrong. Leave Pac alone." What Tupac said next would become legendary in the history of artistic resistance. "You know what?" Tupac said, looking directly at Detective Williams. "I'm going to come with you, because that's what law-abiding citizens do. But first I'm going to finish this song for these people, because that's what artists do. And if you got a problem with that, you're going to have to arrest me in front of 35,000 witnesses." The arena exploded. The roar was so loud that it seemed to shake the building's foundation. Fans were on their feet, screaming support, many of them crying as they watched their hero take a stand against what felt like systematic persecution. Detective Williams found himself in an impossible situation. Arresting Tupac mid-song would likely cause a riot among 35,000 angry fans, but allowing him to continue performing would undermine police authority and set a dangerous precedent. "Mr. Shakur," Detective Williams said, "we need you to come with us now." "And I told you," Tupac replied. "I will. Right after I finish what I started." These people didn't pay to see a police raid. They paid to see Tupac Shakur perform. The standoff continued for several tense moments. Tupac stood center stage, microphone in hand, facing down 6 armed officers, while 35,000 fans watched in breathless anticipation. Then someone in the crowd started chanting, "Let him sing! Let him sing!" Within seconds, the entire arena had picked up the chant, 35,000 voices screaming in unison, "Let him sing! Let him sing!" The sound was overwhelming, intimidating, and absolutely unified. Detective Williams later described it as one of the most powerful displays of collective will he had ever witnessed. But what happened next would truly make history. Tupac raised his hand, and the entire arena fell silent instantly. 35,000 people stopped chanting on his gesture alone. The power of that moment, one man commanding the absolute attention of such a massive crowd, was not lost on anyone present, including the police officers. "Officers," Tupac said, "I respect the law, I respect your authority, but I also respect these people who came here tonight looking for hope, looking for truth, looking for music that speaks to their struggles." He gestured toward the crowd. "Look at them. These aren't criminals. These aren't troublemakers. These are working people, students, families. They saved up money to be here tonight. And you want to destroy that experience because you couldn't wait 2 hours to serve a warrant." Detective Williams was clearly struggling with the situation. Standard police procedure said to make the arrest immediately, but the circumstances were anything but standard. "How about this?" Tupac continued. "I'll make you a deal. Let me finish this one song. 3 more minutes. And then I'll walk off this stage with you voluntarily. No resistance, no drama, no problems. But if you try to drag me off this stage right now, in front of all these people, you're going to have a riot on your hands." The officers huddled briefly, speaking into their radios, clearly getting instructions from supervisors. The entire arena waited in tense silence. Finally, Detective Williams approached the microphone. "Mr. Shakur, you have 3 minutes to finish your song. Then you're coming with us." The crowd erupted again, but this time it was more celebration than protest. Tupac had negotiated with the police and won the right to finish his performance. "Thank you, officers," Tupac said genuinely. "And thank you," he said to the crowd, "for having my back when I needed you most." But the song he chose to finish with would become the stuff of legend. Instead of continuing "Me Against the World," Tupac made a spontaneous decision that would be talked about for decades. He gestured to his DJ and said, "Put on Changes." As the opening notes of one of his most socially conscious songs began to play, Tupac looked out at the crowd and said, "This song is about the changes we need to see in this world." And what y'all just witnessed, 35,000 people standing up for what's right. Police officers listening to the community, everyone treating each other with respect. That's what change looks like. He began to sing, but his performance was different from anything he had ever done before. There was a raw emotion in his voice, a vulnerability that came from knowing this might be his last moment of freedom for a while. The entire arena sang along, but it wasn't the usual energetic crowd participation. It was something deeper, more meaningful. 35,000 people singing about social change, while police officers waited to arrest their hero, created a surreal and powerful atmosphere. When Tupac reached the line, "That's just the way it is, things will never be the same," his voice cracked with emotion. Many fans were openly crying, understanding the profound significance of the moment they were witnessing. As the song ended, Tupac set down his microphone and walked toward the waiting officers. But before he reached them, something unprecedented happened. The entire arena stood up and began applauding. Not the wild cheering that typically ended concerts, but slow, respectful applause. The kind you hear at funerals or graduation ceremonies. 35,000 people acknowledging that they had witnessed something historic. Detective Williams later said that making that arrest was one of the most difficult things he had ever done as a police officer. "I've arrested a lot of people in my career," he reflected years later, "but I've never had to arrest someone who handled the situation with more dignity and respect than most of my fellow officers would have shown." As Tupac was led off stage in handcuffs, he turned back to the crowd one final time and said, "Don't let them make you think this is what defeat looks like. This is what resistance looks like. This is what standing up for your principles looks like." The impact of that night extended far beyond the arena. News of Tupac's mid-concert arrest spread rapidly, but the story that emerged was not the one law enforcement had expected. Instead of reports about a disruptive rapper who resisted arrest, the media narrative focused on Tupac's dignified response to police harassment and the crowd's peaceful but powerful show of support. Video footage of the incident, recorded by fans throughout the arena, showed clearly that Tupac had been respectful, cooperative, and focused on protecting his audience from potential violence. The contrast between his calm professionalism and the heavy-handed police tactics became a rallying point for discussions about police overreach and artistic freedom. Civil rights organizations immediately began analyzing the incident as a case study in how law enforcement targets successful black artists. The timing of the arrest, during a performance in front of thousands of witnesses, was seen as deliberate intimidation designed to humiliate Tupac and send a message to other artists who spoke out against systemic injustice. What happened in Oakland was a textbook example of how the system tries to silence voices that challenge its authority, explained Dr. Cornell West, who became one of many prominent figures to speak out about the incident. But Tupac's response showed that dignity and resistance can coexist. The arrest itself was eventually revealed to be based on questionable evidence. The assault and battery charges stemmed from an altercation outside a nightclub where Tupac had allegedly been involved in a fight. However, witness testimony was inconsistent, and video evidence was inconclusive. Many observers noted that the charges could easily have been handled through Tupac's attorneys without the dramatic public arrest. The decision to serve the warrant during a live performance seemed designed more for intimidation than law enforcement. Legal analysts pointed out that the police had multiple opportunities to arrest Tupac at his hotel, his recording studio, or any number of private locations. Choosing to do so in front of 35,000 fans suggested that the arrest itself was meant to be a public spectacle. But if the goal was to humiliate Tupac or damage his reputation, the strategy backfired completely. The Oakland Arena incident became a defining moment in Tupac's career, but not in the way law enforcement had intended. Instead of damaging his credibility, the arrest enhanced his status as an artist willing to stand up to authority while maintaining his principles. Concert promoters around the country reported increased demand for Tupac performances following the incident. Fans saw his dignified response to police harassment as proof of his authenticity and courage. After Oakland, everybody wanted to see Tupac perform, recalled James Morrison, a concert promoter who worked with Tupac during this period. People were curious to see if lightning would strike twice, if he would face down authority again. Other artists began incorporating elements of Tupac's Oakland response into their own performances. Some started addressing police brutality directly from stage, while others made explicit statements about artistic freedom and resistance to censorship. The incident also influenced how venues and law enforcement agencies approached concert security and artist relations. Many departments began developing protocols for serving warrants on performing artists that minimized disruption to events and reduced the risk of crowd incidents. Detective Williams, who had led the arrest team that night, eventually became an advocate for community policing and worked to develop better relationships between law enforcement and the entertainment industry. "What I learned that night was that respect goes both ways," Williams explained in a later interview. "Tupac showed more professionalism in that situation than I did. It changed how I approach my job." The charges against Tupac were eventually reduced to a misdemeanor, and he served no jail time. But the legal outcome was less important than the cultural impact of his response to the arrest. The Oakland Arena incident became a template for how artists could resist authority while maintaining their dignity and protecting their audiences. It demonstrated that confrontation didn't have to mean violence or chaos, that sometimes the most powerful resistance came from calm, principled stands. Years later, when Colin Kaepernick began kneeling during the national anthem to protest police brutality, many observers drew connections to Tupac's Oakland Arena moment. Both incidents involved Black public figures using their platforms to challenge systemic injustice while maintaining peaceful, respectful approaches to resistance. Tupac showed us that you don't have to be aggressive to be powerful, reflected Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, a prominent scholar and commentator. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is remain calm and dignified when people are trying to provoke you into losing control. The 35,000 fans who witnessed the Oakland Arena incident carried the memory of that night for the rest of their lives. Many described it as a transformative experience that changed how they viewed authority, resistance, and the power of collective action. "I learned that night that regular people can make a difference," said Maria Santos, who was 22 years old and attending her first Tupac concert when the arrest occurred. 35,000 people standing up together was more powerful than any weapon the police had. The incident also highlighted the unique relationship between hip-hop artists and their communities. Unlike other genres where the relationship between performer and audience is primarily entertainment-based, hip-hop has always involved elements of advocacy, education, and resistance. "That night showed the world what hip-hop really is," explained music journalist and cultural critic Kierna Mayo. "It's not just music, it's a movement, and movements require people willing to stand up when it matters most." The impact extended beyond the hip-hop community into broader discussions about artistic freedom, police accountability, and the rights of performers. Law school professors began using the Oakland Arena incident as a case study in civil liberties, constitutional law, and the intersection of entertainment and political expression. The incident also influenced changes in venue policies and artist contracts. Many performers began including clauses in their agreements that protected them from law enforcement, harassment during performances, while venues developed protocols for handling legal issues that arose during events. But perhaps the most lasting impact was on the fans themselves. The 35,000 people who participated in the "Let Him Sing" chant carried that experience into other areas of their lives, becoming more likely to stand up against injustice in their communities, workplaces, and schools. "Tupac showed us our own power that night," reflected fan David Chen, who attended the concert as a college student. "We learned that when people come together for the right reasons, they can change the outcome of any situation." The Oakland Arena incident remains one of the most powerful examples of artistic resistance in American cultural history. It demonstrated that performers have both the opportunity and responsibility to use their platforms for more than entertainment, that sometimes the most important moments happen when the music stops and real life takes over. Tupac's response to police harassment during that October night in 1995 became legendary not because he fought or fled, but because he chose dignity, respect, and peaceful resistance over confrontation and chaos. The 35,000 fans who went wild that night weren't just cheering for their favorite artist. They were celebrating the power of principled resistance and the possibility of change through collective action. 28 years later, the Oakland Arena incident continues to inspire artists, activists, and ordinary people who find themselves facing moments when they must choose between safety and principles, between silence and speaking truth to power. The flashing police lights that cut through the darkness that October night illuminated more than just a stage. They revealed the character of a man who chose to stand up for what was right, even when it would have been easier to simply comply and stay silent. The charges filed against Tupac, following the Oakland Arena incident, became one of the most closely watched legal cases in entertainment industry history. What started as a simple assault and battery charge evolved into a constitutional test case about artistic freedom, police accountability, and the rights of performers. Tupac's legal team, led by prominent civil rights attorney Johnny Cochran, immediately challenged both the validity of the charges and the methods used to serve the arrest warrant. They argued that arresting Tupac during a live performance was an unconstitutional violation of his First Amendment rights and constituted unlawful harassment designed to intimidate him and chill his artistic expression. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Robert Chen, maintained that no one was above the law, and that Tupac's celebrity status didn't exempt him from accountability for his actions. They argued that the timing and location of the arrest were irrelevant to the underlying criminal charges. But as the case proceeded through the courts, evidence emerged that supported Tupac's claims of harassment and intimidation. Internal police documents, obtained through discovery motions, revealed that the Oakland Police Department had been monitoring Tupac's concerts and public appearances for months before the arrest. Officers had attended multiple performances, filed detailed reports about his lyrics and stage behavior, and developed what they called intervention strategies for dealing with his inflammatory rhetoric. More damaging still were recorded conversations between police supervisors discussing the best ways to send a message to Tupac about the consequences of his anti-police lyrics. In one particularly damaging recording, Detective Williams could be heard saying, "We need to show him that he can't hide behind his music when he attacks law enforcement." These revelations transformed the case from a simple assault charge into a broader examination of police misconduct and the targeting of artists for their political expression. Civil rights organizations rallied around Tupac's case, filing amicus briefs, arguing that the arrest represented a pattern of systematic harassment against socially conscious hip-hop artists. The ACLU, NAACP, and National Association of Recording Arts and Sciences all provided support for his legal defense. "This case is about much more than one arrest," explained ACLU attorney Sarah Johnson. "It's about whether police can use the criminal justice system to silence artists whose messages they find threatening." The defense team also uncovered evidence that the original assault charge was based on unreliable witness testimony and potentially falsified police reports. Security camera footage from the nightclub where the alleged incident occurred showed that Tupac had actually been trying to break up a fight rather than starting one. As the legal proceedings continued, public support for Tupac grew significantly. Protest demonstrations outside the courthouse drew thousands of supporters, while musicians across multiple genres spoke out against what they saw as an attack on artistic freedom. The case also attracted international attention. Musicians, civil rights leaders, and government officials from around the world condemned the arrest as an example of American authoritarianism and the suppression of dissenting voices. Nelson Mandela, in a statement that shocked many observers, compared Tupac's situation to the harassment he had faced from apartheid-era police in South Africa. "When governments begin arresting artists for their creative expression," Mandela said, "it is a sign that freedom itself is under attack." The overwhelming support for Tupac created significant pressure on prosecutors to resolve the case. After 18 months of legal proceedings, District Attorney Chen announced that his office was dropping all charges against Tupac in exchange for his participation in a community service program focused on police community relations. But the resolution of the legal case was only the beginning of the story's impact on American culture and politics. The Oakland Arena incident, and its aftermath, became a defining moment in the ongoing struggle for artistic freedom and police accountability. It demonstrated that individual acts of resistance could inspire broader movements for social change, and that artists had both the power and responsibility to use their platforms for more than entertainment. The incident also marked a turning point in hip-hop's relationship with law enforcement. Before Oakland, most artists tried to avoid direct confrontations with police, preferring to express their criticisms through lyrics rather than direct action. After Oakland, a new generation of artists began incorporating explicit resistance and community organizing into their public personas. The concept of dignity and resistance that Tupac demonstrated that night became a model for activists and artists across multiple movements, from Black Lives Matter protests to LGBTQ+ rights demonstrations. Organizers began emphasizing the power of calm, principled stands against injustice. The 35,000 fans who participated in the Let Him Sing chant became ambassadors for this approach to resistance, carrying the lessons they learned that night into their own communities and organizations. Many of those fans went on to become leaders in various social justice movements, crediting the Oakland arena experience with teaching them about the power of collective action and peaceful resistance. That night changed my life, reflected community organizer Patricia Williams, who was 19 years old when she attended the concert. I learned that ordinary people could stand up to authority when they came together for the right reasons. That lesson guided everything I did afterward. The incident also influenced changes in police training and policies regarding interactions with public figures and entertainment events. Many departments began developing more nuanced approaches to serving warrants on performing artists, recognizing that heavy-handed tactics could backfire and create unnecessary public relations problems. What I learned from that night is that respect and dignity matter more than authority, Williams explained. Tupac showed me that you can disagree while still treating someone with professionalism. Students studying civil rights learned about it alongside Montgomery and Birmingham, understanding it as part of America's ongoing struggle for equality and justice. Today, the Oakland moment continues to inspire artists and activists facing censorship and political pressure. The response that made 35,000 fans go wild wasn't violence. It was calm insistence that art matters and resistance means refusing to be intimidated into silence.